in Denver, Colorado. It's 2 after 7, and we're starting the engineering challenge. We had the cleaning lady come in here. Okay, in this room, I'd like to introduce who's around. So we've got Ron Dutton in the corner there.
Hey, everybody.
He's moderating us. I'm Jim Serco, and I'm non-moderated. And this is Margaret Tizak. And look at the selfie coming up here for Colton. A nice one. That's good. All right, great. Okay, so we're going to move on here and start up the video. And we're going to go down here and do this thing. There. And there. Colton's leading me by the nose here. Okay. And we'll minimize this guy. Drag that stuff out of the way. Yes, here's proof positive.
Move to the next.
Oh, okay. So, Destination Imagination, Engineering Monster Effects. This is a load-bearing challenge. Let's go on. I'm not having very much luck with moving the slides here. Okay, gotcha. All right, so team managers, this is your training. There is nothing wrong with having team members listen to this because we're not going to tell you anything that we wouldn't want you to know or that we wouldn't want the team to know. So this is a great challenge, and thank you team managers for doing this. Those of you who are new team managers, we sympathize with you, and I want to tell you something from the tips that we can give you from experienced people, and that is get a co-team manager to help you out. But this is a great thing you're doing for the kids. We appreciate what you're doing. They will appreciate it too, and most of us have managed teams in the past, and it's been a great thing. So we've already introduced you. Everybody's going on. We're going to talk about the Affiliate Challenge Masters, give you some information on them, talk about the structure, the story, the scoring, and the tournament schedule and regional challenge masters, and then questions. And then we're going to send some other information your way too after we're kind of done with the formal presentation. So you're helping our kids out here, and as an employer, I can tell you among the things I really look for in employees is the ability to work together as teams, to problem solve, to make decisions together, to be critical thinkers. And this is a great program to help kids get familiar with doing those things. It's got to do with communication, collaboration, and using technology in their lives and in their work. They'll learn all sorts of good things here about citizenship, life and career, personal and social responsibility. And this is a good thing you're doing. So I know that sometimes it's like, oh, do these kids ever do anything but eat? Yeah, they will. And sometimes they'll really surprise you. So you saw us earlier. Colton Tapler is our lead Colorado Affiliate Challenge Master this year. There's Colton's address. Send him all the questions. Don't send any of them to me. My name's Jim Serco. I've been at this before, and Margaret Tizak, and we're the same 3 state challenge masters as we had last year. So if you need to get hold of us, those are the ways to do it. And let's see here. I think we got something going on here. Help me out, Colton. Help me out here. I just thought I advanced the slide. I'll bet you my cursor was off the screen, wasn't it? So in the challenge, the team will design and build a freestanding structure, and how much weight can it hold without failing? Watch this, stacking weights onto the structure, then removing them. You'll see later on that as they remove the weights, they get exactly the same value as if they put another weight on. So it's the most successful teams will be those teams who know the structure well enough that they can put the weights on there, figure out just the moment it's going to break, stop putting weights and start taking the weights off. And if it sounds easy to take the weights off of a structure without breaking it, you're in for a surprise because it's difficult. And it's going to have a lot to do with how the teams place the weights to give themselves the ability to do that. That's a little bit of inside information here. And that's why you're on this webinar tonight, because you want to get your team the best opportunity they can have to be successful. So putting weights on a structure, then removing them. Unfortunately, if they remove them after the structure's failed, that doesn't add points to their score. So bad news there. They're going to also create and present a story. It has a sudden appearance of a monster with surprising results. Watch those words. And a special effect is triggered to enhance the monster's sudden appearance. I know it sounds a little tough here. And then two team choice elements are presented. Team choice elements, things that the team does well, skills, areas of strength, talents. We'll talk more about that later on. And we have a specialist to talk to you about that. Teams have 8 minutes to present their story and test the structure. So don't get erroneously encased in, okay, we've got this time for the story, now we can test. No, it all happens at one time. Maximum $150 of expense. This is the value of the materials that they drag across the launch line into the performance area at the tournament. It doesn't include the props that they built and decided to throw away, the number of structures that they built and destroyed, all that stuff. This is what they drag across the line at tournament. So the structure designed and built by the team. Criteria coming up soon. Structure tester, tester base, device used to test the performance of the structure, and that's a little schematic of it there on the right side of the screen. Testing, subjected to various forces. In this year, we're putting weights on top of the pressure board, and we want to score the maximum points. Teams will want to do this. Teams love winning, love getting this thing right. And the pressure board is that top board. If you see on the right side schematic, it's that square, flat wooden board on top. And that thing is approximately 10 pounds. Often we find them being more like 11 and 12. And the weights that the teams will be using are round Olympic-style weights with 2-inch center holes. And those are good pictures of them right there. We may show you some real ones we have in the studio here later on. And the tournament's going to have a combination of 5, 10, 25, 35, 45-pound weights. We'll talk more about handling those weights in a little while. Safety pole is a 1-inch diameter by 24-inch metal pole to ensure that if there's a failure, these weights don't fall over and injure somebody. And that's important to us. Safety is a big deal to us in here, and we like to make sure that we've got the kids safe when they're doing this. Team manager responsibilities. Here we go. Read that challenge. And if you are like the challenge masters, we read that thing, and this is no exaggeration, 50 times a year. Maybe more. Tonight. Oh, yeah, we did read it 3 times tonight, didn't we? Okay, discuss and understand the challenge. Discuss it with your team. Don't make them read it if they're not at the grade level they can read this. Read it to them so that they understand it. It's boring. Don't read it to them all at one time. If they, let's talk about just a couple of things at one time. Get into more later on. Read the rules of the road. This is good yawning activity, but there are some important things in there. It'll tell you what things need to be included in that $150 of limitation on the expenses. Understand the rules of the road, brainstorm ideas, consult the challenge, and see if the team's ideas are consistent with what the challenge would say. Question the challenge? Sure. Read challenge again. Yeah, if it's not dirty on the edges and looks like it's been run over by a car a few times, you probably haven't run it by the team nearly often enough. Rules of the road again. And then watch for general clarifications. There are none as of today or last week. There are none as of today either. And teams can request up to 10 clarifications from the ICMs. They got to do that by the day after Valentine's Day. That would be February 15th. So those clarification requests need to be into them by that time. So let's talk about the structure. I'm going to get Colton in here. He's going to talk to you about structure and how it's built, what it's about.
All right, so we're going to talk about the structure part of this challenge now. So the structure must be a single freestanding structure. This means that it has to be able to stand on its own without a team member holding it. So if you place it on the table, it has to be able to stand there and meet the rest of these specifications. It can only be built from the list of approved materials, which we'll get to here in a minute of what those materials are. So the structure has to be able to accept a column that is 2 inches all the way through the structure. So it has to easily accept a circular column of 2 inches of outside diameter. We're going to show you here in a minute what that looks like. All right, the weight, it must not exceed 175 grams, which we're just going to we're going to have the team place this structure onto a scale at structure check-in, and that's where we're going to verify whether it meets that weight requirement or not. And then on our 2-inch column, we have marked a 7.5-inch line and a 9-inch line, which are the minimum and the maximum heights that your structure can be at the tournament. So, and then it must fit completely within the structure tester and be able to stand on the tester base without team member assistance. All of these specifications are going to be verified at structure check-in, and we're going to show you what the pole looks like here real quick. All right, so if you take a look, this is what a 2-inch circular column looks like. And this has to run through your structure completely. So your structure has to be able to fit around this column and then be within the correct height. So be within the 7.5 to 9-inch circle, or 9-inch height. So
there are, and recognize that there's a safety pole, which is 1-inch diameter, and there is the hole that needs to go through the structure is 2-inch diameter. And don't have your team show up with a 1-inch, accepting a 1-inch diameter hole through their structure, whereas we need to have this. The reason is because the weights have a 2-inch diameter hole in it. And if your structure won't do the 2-inch diameter hole, then the structure can go up through, and that's not going to work out because the hole in this pressure board is the same diameter. It's the same 2-inch diameter as the weights. Okay. By the way, the structure would go in here first, then this pressure board sits on top of the structure, then weights go on top of that.
all right.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything more right now?
I don't think so. I think we're going to go back now. All right. All right. So this is the approved list of materials. So we've got aluminum foil, cork, duct tape, electrical tape, flexible plastic tubing, glue, latex-free balloons, latex-free rubber bands, monofilament fishing line, paper, wire, and then wood. So we're going to talk about all of these materials more towards the end of the presentation, the different specifics about the materials and possible places where you might be able to find these materials if you're having a hard time. All right. So more than one size or type of these materials may be used. An example of this could be a team could use balsa wood and basswood and pine wood all in their structure. Another example of this could be they could use different sized rubber bands or different diameters of plastic tubing. There's all kinds of, any different type is perfectly okay as long as it meets the specifications of the challenge. So team-made laminates are perfectly allowed. Commercial-made laminates are not allowed. So a laminate is where you take a piece of wood and you glue it together and glue multiple pieces together. So like plywood that you find at the hardware store, that is not going to be allowed, but it doesn't mean a team can't make their own plywood by gluing a bunch of pieces together and increasing the strength with, by laminating it all. The structure may not be soaked in anything other than water. And then if it is soaked in water, the structure must arrive on tournament day dry. So we can't have any soaking wet structures that are leaving water everywhere. That's a big problem. So the structure can be marked with pencil, ink, pen, or markers. So these are the kind of marks that are like incidental type marks usually, things that occur when the structure is being made. Those are perfectly okay. However, the structure may not be painted, stained, varnished, or otherwise coated. This is very crucial to keep in mind when you're creating your structure to ensure that there is no painting or staining or varnishing or coating of any kind. So keep that in mind when you're using glue. All right, so the structure, we have a bill of materials this year, which is different than previous years. So the bill of materials is provided at the end of the challenge with all of the other tournament day forms. So you're going to list out all of the different materials on this bill of materials that you use in the construction of your structure. A properly completed bill of materials gives you an easy 10 points. It's literally yes, you have it, or no, you don't. So hopefully every team brings a completed bill of materials on tournament day, and that's a really easy 10 points for your team to get. So you have to provide a sample of each material that's used in the structure. All forms of the material count as a single material type. And then all forms of a material do not need to be the same, can differ in size, shape, thickness, or other characteristics, color for that matter. So they don't all have to be the same, but you have to provide a sample of the materials that are used within your structure. And then it is important to note that you have to provide the original packaging for some of the materials. In the challenge, it specifically states for specific materials that the original packaging must be provided. One of these items that we always have issues with is latex-free rubber bands. You have to bring the packaging. There's a lot of other materials too that require you to bring the packaging on tournament day. All right. So the teams are encouraged to build, test, refine structures prior to tournament. We highly encourage teams to just build something and get it to hold the pressure board. That's a great starting point. Once you've gotten to that point, you can build on that, figure out how to make it stronger, figure out how to make it work better. Once teams build one structure, they're on a great path to build lots more. We highly encourage teams to build as many structures as they possibly can before the tournament. In the past, like really competitive teams at like global finals, they've built as many as 50 to 100 structures. So that isn't really out of the realm if you're looking to be a real competitive team. So, but for some of the newer teams, 2 to 3 structures, maybe 4 or 5, somewhere in there is probably a good number to shoot for before the first tournament at the very least. These tests are best performed using an actual structure tester. So actual structure testers, there is a guide on how to make an actual structure tester, which can be found on the dicolorado.org website under the resources tab. You can also find it on the destinationimagination.org website in the resources section. There's a how to build a structure tester guide. Team members must do all the tooling and or shaping of the structure. So they have to make all the cuts, they have to make all the different gluing together, they have to do all of the different shaping of that structure. We've had issues in the past where team managers have done like some of the gluing or things like that, or even using a saw. That is not allowed. Team members have to do all of that tooling and shaping. So it's perfectly okay to show a team member how to use those tools, but the team member actually has to do all that tooling and shaping. So if a jig is used, it must be team created. So jigs are a device used to replicate the same piece or element again and again. So a jig can be something very simple, like a drawing on a piece of graph paper that your team uses in order to make the same structure over and over again. They can be also something very complex where it's like a 3D box or something that a team uses to create their structure somehow. So they could just have to be team made. You can't go out and buy a jig that it makes like the perfect structure. It has to be team created.
Does the team have to build the structure tester?
The team does not have to build the structure tester. Anyone can build the structure tester. It can be a team member. It could be a team manager. It can also be a grandpa, a grandma, an aunt, an uncle. Anyone can make a structure tester. The state DI office, if you contact Kate at the state office, she has structure testers and weights that she can loan out to teams if they don't have one and want to borrow one. I believe she loans them out for 1 week at a time kind of thing. And it's a way for your team to be able to use a structure tester that's going to be the same as the ones on tournament day beforehand, so they actually have an idea of how to do the structure testing.
How about the cost of that?
So the cost is not included in the expense report. It is something that is totally exempt.
Thank you.
All right. So anytime after the presentation time begins, the team may place the structure onto the structure tester. The safety shields may be removed before placing the structure on the structure tester. And then once placed, but before placing weights, the team must first place the pressure board. So your team has to place the structure onto the structure tester, then to the pressure board before placing weights. When placed on the structure tester, the structure may only contact the top surface of the tester base, the bottom surface of the pressure board, and the safety pole. Do we want to show this?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to show a visual here. All right.
Okay, you talk, I will act.
All right. So your team is going to place their structure over the safety pole to start and put it onto the structure tester. The safety shields can be removed at that time if they so desire. Here in Colorado, most of our structure testers, the safety shields are just Velcroed in, so they're really easy to just peel right off and then be able to reach in and hold the structure if you want. And then the pressure board is going to go on top of the structure into place. And then a team member can hold the structure, touch the structure while the pressure board is being placed. That is perfectly okay. And then the structure can only contact the bottom surface, the top surface of the structure tester, the bottom surface of the pressure board, and then the safety pole. So those are the only surfaces that the structure is allowed to touch. All right. And then the safety shields have to be put back into place before weight placement can begin, except for if there is a physical connection between the structure and the special effect. That one side, the safety shield can remain off. All right. I think that's it.
Do you want to show the height, how you do the 2-inch? Or you can do it.
We did that already. Okay. I think that's it. We're going to go back. All right. All right, so anytime before weight placement begins, your team may physically connect the special effect to the structure. So when the pressure board is being placed, your team can connect the special effect, or you can connect it after the pressure board has been placed. However, it has to happen before the weights are placed onto the pressure board. So all physical connections between the structure and the special effect can be made through that one team selected side of the structure tester. So, and on that side, the safety shield is allowed to remain off during structure testing and weight placement. If a special effect is triggered before weight placement begins, the team may reset their special effect. So this is crucial when you're looking at the automatic triggering in the scoring section. If the special effect gets set off, they can reset their special effect and have it be triggered when it's actually supposed to be triggered and still earn the points for the automatic triggering of the special effect. All right, so weight placement begins anytime after the special effect is connected and the pressure board has been put into place. So the team is going to select the desired weight from the loading zone, which will be marked out at the tournaments. Lower the weight over the safety pole and onto the pressure board or previously placed weights. And then the structure must support a placed weight for 3 seconds as counted by the weight placement appraiser for that weight to be included in the official weight held. So the weight placement appraiser is going to be counting that 3 seconds. but the team members can continue to be placing weights even though the weight placement appraiser may not have counted for the full 3 seconds on that weight. The key is that the weights only count up to where the weight placement appraiser has counted for the 3 seconds before, if it breaks. So if the team places weights and it hasn't gotten all the way to the top for each weight holding for 3 seconds, they may not receive credit for those weights that hadn't held for 3 seconds. So weight placement ends when the team elects to stop placing weights or removes a weight from the weight stack from the structure tester. The top of the weight stack reaches a mark that is 1 inch below the top of the safety pole, and the structure fails and the pressure board touches any of the safety supports. And then lastly, the 8-minute time limit ends. All right, do we want to show some of these things?
Yeah.
All right.
What are we showing?
So we're going to show how weight placement ends.
Oh, weight placement ends?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So when the team elects to stop placing weights or removes a weight from the weight stack, that is how weight placement ends. Or when it reaches the mark that's 1 inch below the top. On tournament day, there'll be a mark that is 1 inch below the top of the structure tester. When the weight reaches that point, when it is above the bottom of it, weight placement ends. But if it is only at it, the team may place one more weight. All right. And then the other way that weight placement can end is when the structure tester touches one of the safety supports. So that would cause weight placement to end. The way this is verified is using a single sheet of paper. When it can't be slid through, that is when weight placement ends, is when that one sheet of paper can't be slid through. All right.
I have a good demonstration.
Okay. Oh. All right, and then structure weight removal. So if the structure fails during weight placement, the team will not be allowed to attempt weight removal. So, but if the structure is still holding, when either they've reached one of the conditions that stops weight placement or the team elects to stop weight placement, they can begin to attempt weight removal. So the teams remove weights, including the pressure board, one at a time and place them into the designated unloading zone. So this will be a marked out area at the tournament that's designated the unloading zone, and the team will place the weights there that they've unloaded from the structure. So a weight will be included in the official weight removed if the structure supports the remaining weights for 3 seconds as counted by the weight placement appraiser. So the structure has to hold for 3 seconds after the weight has been lifted off of the weight stack. So once the weight is not contacting the weight stack any longer, the 3-second count will start. The pressure board will be included in the official weight removed once it is lifted off of the top of the structure. Weight removal ends in one of the 4 ways. The team removes all of the weights and the pressure board. The team elects to stop removing weights, or the structure fails, or the 8-minute time limit is reached.
That's likely going to happen a lot.
Yeah, that is definitely very likely that teams are going to run out of time. So
Practice this.
practice, practice, practice. We can't stress that enough, really. All right. So when within a zone marked 2 feet from the structure tester on all 4 sides, team members must wear protective eyewear. So this is going to be known as the safety zone. The safety zone is 2 feet from every side of the structure tester. Regular eyeglasses do not qualify as protective eyewear. Teams must provide their own protective eyewear. They will not be provided on tournament day. They must bring their own. But that doesn't mean you can't go ask another team to borrow some, say you forget yours. But you have to provide your own. We will not have any on tournament day. All right, we're going to show some examples of protective eyewear here. We got some safety goggles.
It's like chemistry goggles. They do come in kids' sizes too. I've seen some goggles on kids where the goggles were bigger than their heads. So you can find these somewhere. I can't tell you where. Those are cool. This is safety glasses. They've got the side plates on them, and they're built tough. All right. There's also, instead of dark lenses, you can also get a clear lens on this as well. You can put that clear lens on here in place of the dark lenses. This is regular sunglasses. No side plates on here for protecting the eyes. These regular sunglasses are not going to work. Make sure your teams bring the right stuff to tournament.
Yep. And that also goes for regular eyeglasses. They do not count either.
That's correct, yes.
So.
And these goggles go over eyeglasses pretty well.
Yep. All right. All right. So there will not be any extension poles provided this year. That is different than in previous years. Every single tournament, the regional tournament, the affiliate tournament, and global finals, there will not be any safety poles. So the 24 inches that you have on this safety pole is all the height you're going to have on the pole. So keep that in mind, that you're going to only be able to put a limited number of weights onto the structure. So it's important to think about which weights you're going to be placing on there with the height you have. All right. So adult assistants, elementary and middle level teams may use an adult assistant to lift weights that are 25 pounds and greater. So that means that they can help with 25-pound weights, 35-pound weights, and 45-pound weights. They cannot help with the 10-pound weights or the 5-pound weights. So team members must actively participate in lifting, carrying, and placing and removing weights. So this means that the team members have to be able to hold their half of the weight. So when you think about on a clock, the team member should have their hands at like 4 and 8 roughly is where the team member should have their hands. And then in order to be able to actively hold their part of the weight. Adult assistants shouldn't be lifting the whole weight by having their hands at 3 and 9. So they should have their hands more towards 12 o'clock kind of thing on a clock, if you're thinking about the weights that way. The adult assistant may not direct weight placement or weight removal in any way. They may only respond to specific directions from team members or appraisers. So the adult assistant needs to remain in a designated area, which will be marked off on the floor that will say adult assistant on it at all of the tournaments. And the adult assistant needs to remain in that area until a team member indicates which weight they want. So if they're using an adult assistant, they need to point to the weight they want and be like, I need help with this weight. And then the adult assistant can leave the designated area and come and help the team member place that weight. Once the weight has been placed and you've removed your hands, the adult assistant needs to immediately go back to that designated area. If the rules are not followed, teams will be only allowed to place 25-pound weight, less than 25-pound weights. So that means teams will only be allowed to place 10 and 5-pound weights if the adult assistant has been asked to leave the presentation area for interfering with this process of weight placement. However, if an adult assistant has been asked to leave, the team can still remove the weights that are 25-pound, 35-pound, and 45-pound weights without the adult assistant. However, it is up to the weight placement appraiser to determine if this is safe or not. Teams may use the full 8-minute presentation time for the weight placement and the weight removal, regardless of whether or not the story is still happening. And then teams may continue their story if time remains within the 8 minutes, even if their structure has failed or weight removal has been completed. So your team can continue doing your performance for the whole 8 minutes, even if your structure is already broken after, say, just 2 minutes or something. Or vice versa. If your presentation only takes 3 minutes or 5 minutes, then your team can still use the full 8 minutes for their weight placement and weight removal. All right, now we're gonna have Margaret talk about all the story aspects of the challenge. Yeah, hit the arrow key.
Yeah, great. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the story. And the story is going to include a monster, special effect, and the team choice elements. Each team is going to create and present a story in which the sudden appearance of a monster has surprising results. For the challenge, the monster is defined as any creature, real or imaginary, with an unusual shape, appearance, behavior, or character. More than one monster may be included in the story. However, for purposes of scoring the monster, only one monster can be identified for scoring on the tournament data form. That only one monster will be identified on the tournament data form for earning points for the theatrical effect, essentially. So while they can have more than one monster, they have to pick the one that's going to be scored for this particular purpose. The story may be set in any location, real or imaginary, and in any time periods, past, present, or future. They're going to design and create a special effect that uses technical methods to enhance the sudden appearance and or events surrounding the monster in the story. And they're going to earn points for technical innovation and technical design based on all technical methods used or attempted during the presentation. And you'll notice that there's a lot of defined terms in this particular aspect, in this particular screen, I suppose, and in the challenge. I highly encourage you all to look at the challenge and have your team members look at the definitions of each of these items. Technical methods, for instance, the special effect, monster. It's really helpful for the kids to go through and dissect it on their own. And in this particular challenge, I think you're going to find that, that the more they sort of examine what the definitions mean, the better the outcome is going to be for them. And they're going to be able to have better ideas and better generation of the special effect and the technical methods. So the team should also integrate the structure testing within the story. And that's really important. The one simple way to look at it is the best way to define integration that we've found is that the story can't go on without the structure testing, and the structure testing can't go on without the story. That's kind of a true full integration. So you can have the kids kind of look at that and ask that question of themselves and of their story. So here's the definition of monster. They can look on the challenge. You'll see that we have references on the screens to the challenge and what sections have these definitions. The monster is any creature, real or imaginary, with an unusual shape, appearance, behavior, or character. We've already kind of gone over that. And we've talked about how they can include more than one monster, but only one monster will earn points for the theatrical effect. The teams also should basically use good judgment and sensitivity when creating the solution to ensure it's appropriate for all audiences. The special effect. This is an area that the kids are going to want to really think about. The special effect is to enhance the sudden appearance of the monster and or events surrounding the monster. The special effect must be triggered by technical methods. Page 8 of the challenge kind of does identify examples of technical methods. These are principles from the fields of chemistry, computer science, electricity, hydraulics, mechanical or structural engineering, and physics. Other technical effects are also acceptable. The special effect needs to be clearly visible from 25 feet away. And basically, this is, practically speaking, that's the greatest distance the appraisers could be from the special effect. So we need everybody to be able to see it. The special effect must be automatically triggered by a placed weight, a removed weight, or the removal of the pressure board. If the special effect is not triggered automatically, or the structure fails before the special effect is triggered, the team may choose to trigger the special effect in another way. The story should use good and effective storytelling. It's really helpful to work with the kids on what makes a good story, working with the concepts of beginning, middle, and end. All good stories have a beginning, middle, and end. It should be easy to follow. They need to remember that the judges haven't, or the audience hasn't seen their story before, so it needs to be something that should be easy for everybody to follow. It's more creative when there's an original or novel development of the storyline and characters. And again, integration. The teams should integrate the structure testing with the story. The team choice elements. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, the team choice elements are separate. they're included in the presentation, but they're scored on their own. And this is an opportunity for the teams to really highlight or showcase their special talents or strengths. The teams, they can be an interest, they can be a skill, they can be a talent. The teams, the team choice elements may not be a specific item that's already scored as part of the central challenge. So as an example, the team wouldn't be able to pick the monster that they're already having scored for its theatrical effects as a team choice element. They may pick another monster, that's okay if they want to do something like that, but they can't pick one that's already being, pick an item that's already being scored as part of the central challenge. And that was just an example on the monster. There could be other things, but you don't want to try to do a double scoring. That one of them will not get scored and they'll get a 0. Both of the team choice elements must be presented during the 8-minute presentation, and they should have a meaningful connection to the central challenge solution. Again, that goes to integration. So you can see that integration is a concept that we're really working on with the kids. The team choice elements can be anything the team wants to choose for their team choice element. It may be a prop, it may be a technical gadget, a costume, it could be music, special effects, physical actions. You know, we've seen, you name it, we've seen it. It could be anything that they've chosen to come up with. One thing that we encourage you as a team manager to do is to have the team really share their interests and talents, encourage them to each member to fully participate, even if not all interests and talents are going to be formally appraised. It's really a great exercise for the kids to talk about what each other's strengths are and what their strengths are as a team. Encourage them to appraise their own performance challenge. This is both for the story and for their team choice elements, and in order to uncover any gaps or overlap in scored items. It's real. They are their own best critics, and it's really, really helpful. Even one of the other appraisers had a great idea at our Saturday training, and she said, basically you do almost like a T-bar, or 2 columns like a T-bar, and you have, okay, on one column you have all the story elements, and on the other you have like the structure testing, and this is for figuring out what integration is, whether it can be integrated. And then also for scoring, we used to always just highlight the score sheet that they have at the back of the challenge and ask the kids to score themselves on all the different elements of the challenge. And that's a really good exercise. For safety precautions, consult the rules of the road. This is another opportunity for the kids to become involved if they're reading age, of course. We would always just have a copy of the rules of the road on hand at the meetings, and if there was ever a question, have the kids do the research. They can take ownership of it and do a really good job. You should read the rules of the road too, but it's really important for them to understand what the resources are. So things like chemicals, electrical devices, dry ice, and helium. Some sites don't allow things like dry ice and helium, so it's a good idea to check with your tournament officials beforehand. No weapon-looking props, because many schools have a no-tolerance policy. Proper eye protection, we've already covered that. They all need to have closed-toed shoes for the team members who are handling the weights. So any team member that's going to be handling weights needs to have closed-toed shoes. That's a safety issue. And if there's any location-specific considerations, usually those will come out when you have from the local tournament officials will make all the team managers aware of that ahead of time. Scoring overview, and that would be Ron.
Okay, folks, you're getting hit with a lot of information really quickly. We're trying to do a little more of a streamlined presentation this year, but it's really important that as team managers, you help students understand how it's going to be scored, your team members, how it's going to be scored, and not necessarily guide them to alter their solutions from what they want, but to help them focus effort as to what's going to return or possibly score them points. Over the years, we've seen some amazing things come out on the floor. We've seen some amazing solutions. We like it. And then at the end, you find out that it's a non-scored item. So we don't want to discourage that, but we do need to sit there and say that part of your responsibilities is to help students understand where the scoring tallies up for them. And so a lot of what I'm going to be doing is trying to address what's on page 11 of your challenge, which is the big scoring summary. I'm going to present it in a little bit different form. Starting on this first slide, you see it said required paperwork and forms, and you're going, what the heck does that have to do with scoring, Ron? Well, when the teams show up to structure check-in and then to the prep area, these are information elements, paperwork that they have to have before they're really allowed to present. And in some cases, so this is the first kind of threshold for scoring. They have to have these completed. And so the bill of materials, Colton mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll talk about that later. It's a pretty simple, it's an easy 10 points, or if they don't have it, it's a lost 10 points. And I will tell you over the years that 10 points can make a lot of difference. The tournament data form, it's also included in the challenge. This is where the teams get to identify the required elements of their team solution. The monster that we're looking for. What are the team choice elements 1, team choice elements 2? We're not looking for books. We're looking for succinct summaries that help the appraisers understand what they're going to be seeing and what they're going to score. And again, from experience over the years, we know of teams that show up at tournament the morning of and are scrambling to sit there and try to figure out what, and complete the tournament data form. And a tournament data form that is completed at the line, ready to go, that hasn't had a lot of thought into it, typically will not yield the types of points that they would like to get or that we would like to award them if they would think about what the team choice elements are. The expense report, again, a required item. This is not scored, but this verifies that in fact the cost expended for their solution meets or is under the $150 limit. As Jim mentioned out earlier, or the structure tester does not count against these costs. The balsa wood that the teams are going to use and the glue that teams are going to use and the fishing line and the gloves and the cork, everything else that goes into their structure that they're using during practice, developing their structures doesn't count. This is what comes out at tournament, the day of tournament. And then the Declaration of Independence is a pretty simple forward one that just says, we the team members verify that we did this by ourselves and that there are 7 or fewer team members. How do I switch this next one here? Down arrow? Up there, okay, got it. All right, so then next we go to the scoring interview. And again, for those of you that haven't been with us before, there will be 3 sets of preliminary scores that are returned at the presentation site. One addresses structure, one addresses the story with its subcomponents, and then one is the team choice elements. Now there's a 4th element that your teams will be going to be working with called the Instant Challenge. You know all about it. Every team meeting that you're getting together with, you should be practicing Instant Challenge, but that happens at a different location and you receive those scores at the end of the day. But these 3 sets of preliminary scores will be available at the presentation site, usually within a half an hour after your team completes the presentation. So we're going to go into those in a little bit more detail, but this gives you an idea of what you can expect in terms of teams receiving their scores. Now we get into lots of fun. Acronyms. We all know how much we love acronyms. But when we get into this year's challenge, you'll see that there are, one is the official weight held. So this is as the team places its structure and begins to load it up. The pressure board is the first, and then all is successfully placed weight. So those are the ones that are put on, counted up to 3 seconds, below the top of the pole, and they've held. That's the official weight held. One of the appraisers will be tracking those weights on a sheet of paper and will verify those with your team later on. Then there's the official weight removed. At any point in time when they choose to, if the structure has not failed, they can then begin removing weights. One at a time, they may remove them as fast as they would like to. However, Once they remove a weight, for the rest of the weight to count, has to hold it for at least 3 seconds after it's removed. The appraiser will do all of this counting. The teams won't have to worry about it. So then at the end, 8 minutes, or the structure is broken, or the presentation is completed, we will add together the official weight held, the official weight removed, and divide it by the structure of weight, and we will get a ratio out of that. And I have an example coming up on the next slide, kind of shows you how that works. The team that has the highest weight held and removed ratio will receive 100 points, and the rest of the team's points will be scored from that as far as the structure goes. Now, again, remember, I said there's going to be scoring for the team choice elements and teams for the story as well. But for the structure, it'll be a scaled score. On this slide, you'll see an example. This is not included in the challenge. This is one we put together to kind of show you how scoring may work and to help the teams understand that there may be different strategies they choose to pursue in coming up with their scoring. So these are fictitious. We have had no tournaments yet. This is just me sitting down with a spreadsheet trying to come up with things that would show different possibilities of what could happen during a tournament. So in this particular one, we have 8 theoretical teams. You see their structure weights. I highlighted the 40 as being the lowest for Team E. Team C has the highest at 160. All of them are below the 175 grams. Then teams start to place their weights, and you see different representative weights being held there. And these all go up to some value. They, I believe, represent possible combinations of 5, 10s, 25s, 35s, and 45 pounds. And what you'll see there is, again, I'm not suggesting what a team might be able to hold. But in this particular case, under Team D, you see the asterisk, they got to the 300 pounds and their structure broke. So in this particular case, after the 300 pounds, that will eventually translate into their official weight held. They were not able to remove any weights because it had already failed. Going over to the next column, you see fictitious weights for weights that were removed. So the first team, Team A, was able to remove 125 pounds from their pole, and then it broke. Teams B and C removed all the weight that they had stacked. Now, there's a little bit of a problem there because I realized afterwards I forgot to include, excuse me, never mind. It is correct. I went back and corrected it. It includes the pressure board because the first column included the 10-pound pressure board. Team D, as I mentioned, broke. Team E, light structure, placed 80, removed 80. Team F broke as they were unloading. Team G removed all of it, and Team H removed all of it. So the fifth column over says official weight held and removed. So that's the sum of the previous 2 columns. That's all of the weight that they placed and were able to remove. You can see how it goes down there. And in this particular case, Team G got 680 pounds credit. That was the highest, whereas Team E had 160 pounds. That's the lowest. If you divide the official weight held and removed by their structure weight in grams, you get the weight held ratio. And in this particular case, as it worked out, Team D, even though it broke in loading it, wound up having the highest ratio because they had a fairly light structure and they were able to put 300 pounds on before it broke. Excuse me, we're lubricating the tonsil cords. Excuse me.
Just with water, right?
Yeah, just with water, yes.
Okay, let's check.
So you see with the different random results, neither the lightest structure nor the one that carried the most, or some of the ones in between, had the highest weight held ratio. In fact, this one, it was Team D. They set the bar, so they get the 100% mark and they get 100 points. Everything else is scaled from that point down based on the weight held ratio. So I would mention that on your Zoom box, there is a place to submit questions or comments. I know this is pretty confusing. This will be posted later, and if you want to take this and print it off, and you can work through it with your teams so that they understand ratios, and there may be different strategies involved. And as Colton mentioned, the fact that the poll will not have any extension posts as you go to different levels of competition suggests one strategy that might come into play between a regional tournament and an affiliate and global finals is you're not necessarily going to be able to hold more weight than you were before. So that's a strategy. When you get to that point, you can work through your teams with it. In the meantime, going back to something that was said earlier, if they can build the structure and hold the pressure board early on and it's a young team, great. That's a success. Don't worry about the ratio. Just get them to hold the weight. All right, so we're going to move on now, and this gets back to page 11, where we thought one of the things we would like to do is help the teams understand where the different points that make up the different scoring is. So in page 11, there's the total story adds up to 140 points. Now remember, we just went through the structure. That's up to 100 points. The total story is up to 140 points, and it's made up of these 8 different elements. The bill of materials, it's a 0 or a 10. You have it or you don't. The creativity of the story will be assessed by the appraisers on site. We don't know what to tell you. We hope to be blown away. Give it a lot of 15 points, but that again depends on the story your team will create. The theatrical effect of the monster. Again, we're not sure what's going to be happening, how it's going to come out, what's going to be there, but the theatrical effect is up to 20 points. Then the integration, we've talked about integration. Throughout the story, the automatic triggering of the special effect, the design and the technical effect and the theatrical impact of the special effect. If you look at those bottom 3 rows, you're going to see a total of 70 points, i.e. half of what's available to the story. So the special effect is a big deal, and when you add in the automatic triggering, it's now up to 80 points. So a lot of thought needs to go into the special effect. It's going to be complicated, but if you weigh the special effect relative to the story, this may be, again, something where as you work through it with the teams, they can understand how they ought to be allocating some of their creative juices and their energies. We then get to the team choice element. This is up to 60 points. Again, there are 2 of those, so each of them can be worth up to a total of 30 points. As Margaret mentioned, it can't be something that's already being scored. Must be a distinguishable part of a required item, or it can be. It must also be able to be evaluated on a standalone basis. That means a team member needs to be able to describe it. We need to be able to see it. Needs to be able to be explained afterwards about how it's a standalone element, things like that. They can occur simultaneously, provided that we can see both of them and score them separately. In the bottom 3 lines, you see that the 30 points for each is actually comprised of up to 3 or up to 10 points for 3 different items. Now, for those of you that maybe are a little more visual, we've got 2 pie charts here. The one on the left is the central challenge. This is what happens with the special effect, the bill of materials, the story, including the monster, and the structure's weight-held ratio. Gives you some idea of the relative importance of those elements. But in doing that, that's 60% of the total points that a team can be awarded. The pie chart on the bottom right then puts it into kind of an entirety. So the central challenge, which is the first graph, is up to 240 points. The team choice elements come in at 60 points, and the instant challenge is 100 points. So then percentage terms, that's 60%, 15%, and 25%. And we use this as a reminder to, again, every time your team is getting together for a meeting, they should be practicing instant challenge. Because when you get to a point, particularly this year with this pole being a fixed height, a certain number of weights are going to go onto it, one can expect that at the affiliate and global finals tournaments, there are going to be some teams that are going to be relatively close when it comes to Central Challenge. Team choice can begin to separate them, but oftentimes instant challenge makes a difference between top placing and further down. And just last year at Global Finals, we had a team that kind of came out of the Central Challenge pretty well in first place, didn't even finish in the top 10 because their instant challenge score. It's disheartening. It happens. So again, while we're here to talk about monster effects, don't forget instant challenge. All right, so now with that, we're going to go a little bit to the tournament schedule and regional challenge masters, and who's coming up now.
I think that's still you.
Oh, that's,
Is that still you?
no, I didn't think so.
No?
Okay, well, anyway. All right, our tournament schedule here. Some of you, if you're joining us, you're not from Colorado, you can go, refresh your drink or whatever. Here's our tournament schedules. So we have a compressed 4-week schedule beginning February 23rd through March 16th. The first week is Southwest, down in pretty part of the state there, and several of your challenge masters from Colorado. Hope we might be able to make that down there so we can work there, weather permitting. March 2nd is going to be busy. We have Northern Colorado, the Canyon District up North Central, Cherry Creek here in the metro area, and Western Slope over in Rifle. March 9th, again 3, basically 2 here in the metro area, South Metro, North Metro, and then South down in Pueblo. And March 16th will be in Denver and Jeffco. Then we have about a 3-week pause getting ready for the affiliate state tournament at the University of Colorado downtown Denver. We've been there for about 10 years. It's the same location. And then global finals, there'll be about 6 weeks going to May 21st to 26th. This will mark the inaugural year of global finals moving to Kansas City. And it's going to be a different venue, really neat in that all tournament presentation sites will be under one roof. Yep, it's a big roof, but we'll all be in the same place. And for some of you who have been there before and thinking you might be returning, geez, you get to drive. You don't have to fly this year. So that's going to be another big change. So maybe more parents, grandparents, and siblings can come and enjoy the festivities. Okay, challenge masters. They're all listed here. I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm not going to read them all to you. You know, I believe, which tournament you're in. Find them and copy those down. And then later on, again, you can do a screenshot if you're on your computer right now and print them out. And you can send emails to us with questions. In some cases, we'll direct you back to the challenge IDODI and places where you can submit clarifications. And we will tell you, just from our own experience, there are a lot of questions about this. There's going to be a lot of questions reading the fine points about special effect, about the structure, about the details of this challenge. The best thing you can do is write for clarification. Each team is allowed 10. Oftentimes we go only 10. Historically, probably fewer than 30% of our teams submit any, and probably the average number is 2. So you have a lot to work with. Be specific. Pay attention to their guidelines for submitting clarifications. 1 question per clarification. Okay, and that's while the ICMs can break it up and get the information back to you, and making sure that they are answering similar questions or the same questions the same way. But go to idodi.com on the, or .org, excuse me.
No, that is .com.
Oh, that is .com, okay. On the main page, across the top menu bar, you'll see something on resources. If you scan down, see monster effects, that's where any general clarifications will be published. As of yet, there aren't any, but they would be there. Then if you log on to your own account under IDODI, that's where you have the opportunity to enter a team number, ask a question.
It's .org.
It's .org.
Oh, okay, it's idodi.org. Okay, and actually that's on a slide that comes up later. But anyway, that's what we can tell you. One thing about the clarifications you submit, understanding your team should understand too that they're not giving away any secrets. This is a communications between you and the ICMs. Answers that they get back will not be shared with other teams. And if it's something that's really critical or whatever, you will be advised later on to bring that clarification to tournament with you. And if that makes a difference on the solution, it helps us at the site make sure that we're interpreting and guiding our scoring and appraising the same way that the International Challenge Masters had anticipated. But there's the Regional Challenge Masters. Again, it'll be on the printed out or on the copy that's online later. All right, questions? Do we have any general questions?
Two questions. So we had a team ask, can all of the weights be 45-pound weights up to the top of the pole? So the answer to this is just up to your team to decide.
Hey, let me repeat that. I wasn't sure if you're going to pick it up from where's the microphone here.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
one of the questions was whether all the placed weights could be one value, say all 45-pound weights. And yes, they may be. It's up to the team to decide which weights they want to put on and in which order. But there's nothing that says they have to use a mixture of weights. They could be all 45s. They could be all 35s. They could be all 25s up until they reach the top of the safety pole.
There was another question that asked how many of each weight will be provided at tournaments. Here in Colorado, at the regional tournaments and the affiliate tournaments, there will be 10 of each weight provided. That is the same at Global Finals also. So every tournament, if you're from Colorado here, there will be 10 5-pound weights, 10 10-pound weights, 10 25-pound weights, 10 35-pound weights, and then 10 45-pound weights.
Now, one question we often get is, how big are the weights? Well, each of our weight sets varies a little bit, but on the 5s and 10s, one might think approximately 3/4 of an inch. Okay, when you get to the 25s and 35s, an inch to an inch and an eighth. The 45s, an inch and an eighth to an inch and a half, depending on which weight set. So depending on the weight of your structure or whatever, you might think in terms of possibly 9 large weights, maybe 13, 14 smaller weights. Kind of depends on the height of your team's structure. But what we're saying is you'll have ample weights of every size to have the team be able to choose their weights, but they're not going to be able to use all of the large weights on any dimension before they hit the safety pole. Okay, any other questions? All right, so that concludes what we had done at our initial presentation, at the live presentation. Here's our disclaimer saying we've done our best to put together a presentation that represents what's in the challenge. But if you have questions, submit a clarification or get back to us to see what we can do.
Right, we have one more question.
Oh, and another question. Does a miter box count as a jig? No. The miter box is basically it's a tool. So miter box, if you're not know those, these are little devices you can buy at hobby shops that usually have slots in them where you can place a piece of wood, tubing, several of our items that are cork that you could cut, but basically puts in a straight cut or a diagonal cut. That's sold as a tool. Teams are allowed to use it. Does not count as a jig because it's already a pre-made element. Now what I was saying is that was kind of the presentation that we had made at the Saturday training. We now have some additional information we would like to give to everybody out there, give you a little bit of idea, particularly those of you who might be new to the structure